Eventually, Dr. Grant, Tim, Lex, and of course Ellie Sattler, along with Ian Malcolm. I'll say that the employer still dies in the movie, in this scenario. But not by the hands of Rexy, he dies by the hands of the godzillasaurus. Anyways, they would reach the visitor center but realize that it's completely destroyed. The big one in the raptor's corner are heroes, but it's the godzillasaurus who comes and saves them, not Rexy. The big one and the other raptors would pounce on the godzillasaurus, and they would try to do some damage, but it wouldn't be enough to phase the godzillasaurus. If anything, they're just giving him an itch. The godzillasaurus would have enough and just kill the raptors. Seeing that this is their only opportunity to get away, Dr. Grant and Sattler and the others will basically get the hell out of there, while the godzillasaurus is distracted. They'll take the helicopter and leave. And since this is 1993, the godzillasaurus will sense that the volcano is not a serious problem yet, so he will rule that island. So he will rule Isla Nublar until the events of Jurassic World. He will rule Jurassic World for a short period of time, but like I said before in the previous video, he will just leave once he senses that the volcano will soon erupt. So for now, he rules Isla Nublar. But what about Isla Sorna? How does this change the events of Isla Sorna? Let's say that the godzillasaurus gets bored of Isla Sorna and makes his way towards Isla Sorna. He makes his way towards Isla Sorna and becomes the apex predator, putting the other big carnivores like Tyrannosaurus, Ceratosaurus, and the other whatever big carnivores that live on Isla Sorna. As for the Spinosaurus, don't worry, we'll get into that soon. So basically, the godzillasaurus makes its way towards the island and it will encounter the family that appeared in the opening of, in the prologue of the Lost World movie. Instead of the Coffees being the ones who killed the little girl, it would be the godzillasaurus. But it wouldn't just be the little girl. Oh no, everyone in that beach would be getting killed. They would be getting killed. The godzillasaurus would just flat out kill them and sink the boat. Of course, this will get the attention of John Hammett's nephew, and he would want to try to bring this animal to Jurassic Park in San Diego. John Hammett would try to warn him and tell him that it's a bad idea. It's a really bad idea, because this thing is no ordinary dinosaur. It's basically a monster. And the best way to avoid more human casualties is to just leave it alone. The godzillasaurus has no real interest in going to the mainland. After realizing that there are other islands of dinosaurs, he can basically assert himself as the apex predator on any island that he can find sustainable enough for him to live on. Now, the godzillasaurus will eventually like I said before, it will assert itself as apex predator, and of course, the events of the movie will play out very similar to the original. Like Sarah Harding going to the island, and of course, eventually Ian Malcolm, Nick Van Owen, that other guy, I forgot his name, and Ian's daughter, and of course, the engine, and of course, a lot of engine members, along with that weird bounty hunter guy. I almost forgot his name, too. But yeah, they would eventually arrive on the island, but John Hammond's nephew will have a much more different main goal. His main goal is to find and capture the godzillasaurus. And let's say that it got the poacher encouraged enough to try to go after this thing. He's not convinced that this thing is bulletproof. He basically will do everything in his power to take that thing down. Of course, they would still capture the other dinosaurs, yes, but they would need to do everything in their power to lure the godzillasaurus to them. But by the time they do realize what they need to do to lure the godzillasaurus to them, it's already too late, and the godzillasaurus shows up to their camp and destroys everything. And heck, he even starts freeing the other dinosaurs because he hates how the way the humans are treating his fellow dinosaurs. Because, well, he is a dinosaur. Despite him being a kaiju-like dinosaur, he's still considered as a dinosaur. So he would start freeing all the other dinosaurs, and in the chaos, Nick was managed to grab Junior and get him out of there. Of course, the poacher would actually realize that, yeah, the godzillasaurus is actually bulletproof. And it took some serious firepower and a lot of time to bring the godzillasaurus down for John Hammond. And currently, they don't have that type of firepower to bring it down. So if anything, the engine members are forced to run away. Of course, they don't end up meeting Ian Malcolm and the others, unlike the original. If anything, the events that happened with Ian Malcolm will probably stay similar. If not, maybe one or two encounters with the godzillasaurus. But the godzillasaurus will just see that they're not a huge threat to him, so he'll just probably leave them alone. Eventually, let's say that after the T-Rexes, Buck and Doe managed to get their baby back, kill that one dude, and push the truck over, or push the trailer over to the cliff edge, Malcolm and the others are forced to climb back on their own, and yeah. They would eventually meet the others much later when they are walking through the field, and they come across a kill that the godzillasaurus made. And it happens to be the Ametriosaurus. Basically one of the biggest herbivores on the island. And the only real big animal that could propose a real challenge for the godzillasaurus. Of course, the poacher is still hell-bent on wanting to bring down the godzillasaurus because he thinks that he is the most dangerous predator, but in reality, he is in the territory of the world's most dangerous predator. At this point, they're in the godzillasaurus' house, and he now sees them as a threat, except for Ian Malcolm and his group. If anything, he kind of senses that they're not a threat, and they came here to get their family, to get their friend back to their territory. So, if anything, he can see that they're not a threat, so probably will leave them alone. And I know what you guys are thinking, well, how can you be so sure about that? Well, it's simple. In the novelization of Godzilla Minus One, it actually mentions that the Godzillasaurus actually did notice Shikishima in the plane and saw that he wasn't a threat. He didn't fire upon him, he didn't do anything to be a threat to him, so he left him alone. That's why the Godzillasaurus literally walked right past his plane. The only real reason why he grabbed the plane was because he was annoyed at the people who were shooting at him, and he was just taking his anger out on something that he sees as an easy target for him to find. As well, something to take his anger out on. Besides of the tiny, weak little humans. Anyways, back on to the what if. Eventually, the Godzillasaurus will encounter the poachers, the engine members again. Instead of Buck and Doe pursuing the group, it's the Godzillasaurus. He's pursuing them. He's going after them because they're in his house. They're in his territory. East Sorna is his territory, and he's not tolerating any trespassers on his land. Buck and Doe are just keeping their distance. They know when to keep their distance, or when to choose their time to go after the humans, because they can smell their baby's blood on Sarah's shirt. So for now, they'll let the larger predator do its job. It will pursue the others until they get to the long grass. Now, the Godzillasaurus, despite knowing that the rabbits are not a threat to him, he stops because he knows that the rabbits will do a much better job of killing all of them faster than he can. Let's say he was managed to kill some of them, but the others got away. At this point, the poacher guy, he will realize that the Godzillasaurus is the world's most dangerous predator. And he's been hunting it, but in reality, the Godzillasaurus has been hunting them. The Godzillasaurus is no second world's most dangerous predator. It is the first world's most dangerous predator. It's on top of the food chain. Where the only predators on East Sorna, kind of right up there with him, are the T-Rexes, the Spinosaurus, and whatever apex predator is on East Sorna, unless those two big guys are the only real big apex predators. Anyways, most likely they would probably capture Buck after they literally try to go after Ian and his family, and his group, and they would bring him back to the mainland, and the rest of the events of the Lost World will play out very similar. The Godzillasaurus does not get transported to the mainland because, like I said before, John Hammond's nephew doesn't not have the firepower that his uncle had when he captured the Godzillasaurus. So, there's a big difference.